Alrighty, thank you everyone for joining. We're going to get started again and continue this. So I'm going to go back to the slide where we were on. Let me share my screen with everybody. Oh, okay. Share the screen. Alrighty, let me show what is going on. Okay, there we go. Okay. So the definition of sex education is teaching scientifically accurate information about human rights, gender norms, and power in relationships, which includes consent, coercion, intimate partner violence, rape, sexual diversity, puberty, reproduction, communication, sexual health, and that includes STIs and STDs, pregnancy, both intended and unintended, abortion, use of condoms and contraception, as well as how to access health and support services as needed. And that's Haberlin and Rogo 2015. So essentially, all of that encompasses sex education. So that's module 1. So while we're talking about that, let me move this down to the bottom so you can see. Okay, so module 2 is just talking about what the importance is of sex education and why it really needs to be taught across the board. Medically accurate as well, because as you saw with the Kahoot, in Maryland, the information does not have to be medically accurate. So essentially, it makes you wonder, like, okay, well, what are my kids being taught? What are they learning? So as it relates to the urban population, urban youth face higher rates of sexual risky behaviors, such as early sexual initiation, multiple sex partners, and inconsistent condom use. And that could be for many reasons, some of which is not being taught how to properly use a condom, or not even knowing what a condom is and what it's for. Some kids, or some people just don't like the way that they feel, so they don't think they have other options. So it's an array of reasons as to why these risky behaviors are present. So comprehensive sex education can provide them with the knowledge and skills that they need to be able to make those informed decisions about their sexual health, because they may not know, like a lot of times there are sexually transmitted diseases that you cannot get rid of and you have for the rest of your life. And there are things that do not have a cure. So that's something to know, prior to engaging in those behaviors. Another thing for the urban population is reducing health disparities. So like urban communities, they often experience disparities in sexual health outcomes, including higher rates of STIs and STDs, and also a higher rate of unintended pregnancies. Sex education can help reduce these disparities by promoting healthy behaviors and access to reproductive health services. So we have Planned Parenthood here in Maryland. That's one resource, but there are so many others. Like there are things called like Hey Jane, where you can get, reproductive health items sent to you. You don't have to go into a clinic or, wait in a line around a stigma of going to a health clinic. You can have those things, treated at home, or, birth control sent to your door. Another is addressing socioeconomic factors as well. So urban youth, they may face more socioeconomic factors that impact their sexual health, such as poverty, a limited access to healthcare, limited access to transportation, um, limited access to funding. So a lot of times, like, there are people who don't seek out abortions because they don't think that there's funding for it. They can't afford one. However, if they were knowledgeable and they were taught these things, they would know that there are abortion funds where there's money laying around essentially. And if you can't afford it, they'll pay for it and they'll cover it for you for free. Another thing is, as well, is they have a higher chance of being exposed to violence as well as intimate partner violence. Sex education can address these factors by providing information on resources as well as those support services that I mentioned earlier. The other importance of sex education, so this is just continued of module 2, is promoting healthy relationships. So sex education also starts with just letting people know like what are the benefits. One is just being able to communicate your feelings, communicate your emotions, your needs and your wants as well, and also being able to consent to the sexual practices that you're going to engage in. Um, Sex education can help urban youth develop healthy relationships based on respect, communication, and consent. And this is important for preventing dating violence, intimate partner violence, and promoting an overall emotional well-being. Um, Another implication is it empowers the youth to take control of their sexual health and make informed decisions about their bodies and their relationships. And this can in turn lead to improved self-esteem as well as confidence. Preventing teenage pregnancy, which has been on the rise. Urban communities often have higher rates, which can lead to long-term social and economic consequences. Sex education that includes information on contraception and pregnancy prevention can help reduce teen pregnancy rates. Like a lot of teen girls may not know that, okay, male condoms may not be comfortable, you may not like them, but they also have female condoms. Or in the event you don't want to use that, you make a mistake, you can use a plan B the next morning or within, a certain amount of time. But a lot of people don't know that, especially teenagers, and how to access those things, which also contribute to the pregnancy rate. Another implication is promoting reproductive justice. So teaching sex education in urban communities is a matter of reproductive justice, ensuring that all individuals have the information and resources they need to make decisions about their reproductive health. All right. So module 3 is just talking about the effective teaching strategies and models that can be utilized when trying to teach sex education, not only at home, but when working with your kids in school settings. So one is the cognitive behavioral therapy model, which is CBT. This can be used to address the attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors related to sex and sexuality. So it can help students understand the connection between their thoughts, their feelings, their actions, and how these impact their sexual health decisions. So when we look at this based off like a trauma-based model, um, we can see like, okay, why some teenage girls may seem more, I guess, quote unquote, promiscuous, or have more sexually risky behaviors. It could be a result of childhood trauma where they were sexually abused, in turn causing them to be hypersexual, right? So then we look at that and we can kind of break down those thoughts, those feelings, and their actions and see how it leads to those hypersexual behaviors and how to fix that if that's something that they, want to work on. Motivational interviewing is another one, and it focuses on enhancing motivation to change by exploring and resolving feelings of uncertainty or apprehension. So that's important, especially when working with um, urban youth, and especially around sex education, because there's a stigma about talking about it. Another one is a trauma-informed approach, as I said before. So sex education is a very sensitive topic. So making sure that we're utilizing trauma-informed approaches can help create a safe and supportive environment for students who may have experienced this. It kind of promotes safety, trustworthiness, choice, collaboration, and empowerment for those. And another is just a humanistic, like person-centered therapy approach. It's just empathizing, especially as older adults when we're teaching this to our kids or students. We've all most likely have been there before. So just understanding like that confusion and that misunderstanding we felt when we were that age and we were exploring our sexuality, and just trying to be empathetic when working with those younger than us and trying to teach them um, medically accurate information. So this is just utilizing unconditional positive regard and genuineness. It can help educators create a supportive and non-judgmental environment where students feel comfortable discussing health topics related to their sexual well-being. and more on trauma-informed approaches. So if you're working with a student who has experienced trauma, you may need to keep in mind that there are cultural, historical, and gender issues that impact the likelihood that someone has experienced trauma in their response to it. So some examples of the groups of people who may be at a higher risk for trauma could be those who are members of the LGBTQ plus community, people of color, urban youth, those who are living in poverty, those who are living with disabilities, and then any of those who are part of like the juvenile justice system, the child welfare system, foster care, any of those, they are at a higher risk for trauma. So just being mindful of those when working with them. Okay, so right here, this is just some results about abstinence-based programs. So when we talk about things that don't work or that are ineffective, one of which is the highest would be just abstinence. So abstinence means refraining from sex, anything sexually related, period. And most of the time it's more religious based, but most of the time it's remain abstinence, no sex until you are married. And that's pretty much how it is. You only have sex with whoever you're married to, your husband, your wife, and no one else outside of that. And these are very strict. So these are still taught in some states, especially a lot of the red states or like southern states, a lot of the states where they are now banning abortion care, like Texas, Florida, states like that. So this is just some of the implications of that. So this is the percent of schools in which teachers taught specific topics as a part of required instruction. So if we look at this first one right over here, so middle school versus high school, so abstinence as the most effective method, this is how it was taught 76.3% for high school students. So high school students who are probably already sexually active, if not exploring, they were being taught that abstinence is the most effective method to avoid pregnancy, HIV, and any other STDs. If you look at the second one right here, this is just talking about how to prevent pregnancy. So again, in middle school, they were taught that abstinence at a 38% rate was the only way. Not anything teaching about condoms or safe sex or birth control or anything like that, just strictly abstinence. If you look here, I just wanted to go to the one all the way here at the right. So this is how to correctly use a condom. In middle school, only 10% of them were taught how to use a condom. And then 35% for high schoolers who are in that age group where they are starting to be sexually active, if not already. So only 35% of them felt like they were taught on how to correctly use a condom. So this is something that was obtained from the CDC, the Centers for Disease Prevention and Control. So talking about ineffective teaching styles and models, right? So abstinence only education, very ineffective. So this model promotes abstaining from sexual activity until marriage and often excludes information about contraception and safe sex practices, as we just saw. It's ineffective and sometimes it can even be harmful, especially for urban youth because they may face additional challenges related to accessing resources and information, making it educationally just less practical to follow. Another is fear-based approaches, so using fear tactics or emphasizing negative consequences of sexual activity without providing like balanced information about healthy relationships and contraceptives can be ineffective. And it also contributes to the stigma and anxiety among urban youth when talking about their sexual health. Traditional lecture style teaching, so that's just having a teacher stand in front of you and just lecture you about sex education. They lecture you about the body parts. They lecture about, how to use a condom, but there's no demonstration. It's very much passive. There's nothing interactive where you can, try to open a condom yourself and see what it feels like. And let's be hands-on. Let's see how to use these things, right? More so lecture style is just standing in front of you talking, kind of how I'm doing right now. But it's no role playing, it's no real life scenarios, it's no involving the kids in instruction and participation or anything like that. So that has been proven to be ineffective as well. So a little bit more on module 4. So just talking about the ineffective teaching styles, right? So there were some studies that were conducted on teens that were in those abstinence only education programs. And surprisingly, but not surprisingly, the teens in those programs were no more likely to abstain from sex than teens were not. So they were just as sexually active as the kids who were not in the program. Among those who did have sex, there was no difference in the mean age. So like the age where they started at their first sexual encounter or the number of sexual partners that they have been with. So again, it's just proven like these programs where they're trying to teach kids to be abstinent are not doing what they think it's doing. The study also found that youth that participated in the programs were no more likely to engage in unprotected sex than youth who did not. So at the same rate, they were still participating in unsafe sex practices. While teens who participated in these programs could identify the type of STIs at a slightly higher rate than those who did not, the program youth were less likely to correctly report that condoms are effective at preventing the STIs. A more recent review in that study also found that these programs are ineffective in delaying sexual initiation. So they were still initiating it at the same age. They weren't waiting until marriage during this study, or really just remaining abstinent at all. One study found that states with policies that require sex education to stress abstinence have higher rates of teenage pregnancy and births, even after accounting for other factors such as socioeconomic status, education, and race. So again, just showing that the programs are not effective in preventing pregnancy, STDs, STIs, or just the age where the kids are interested in sex, because at the end of the day, sex is a part of human behavior. It's, most of the time, teenagers are going to engage in sexual behavior. All right. So this is activity number 1. So I just wanted to do a quick little test to see if we knew, everyone in here said they had some form of sex education. So I just wanted to see, like, just going off this female anatomy right here. Does anybody know what any of these dots on this diagram, what part of the female anatomy is that? So you guys can take yourself off mute. I just wanted to see, like, if we knew what parts of the body is this.
A uterus?
Which one? Okay, so I'm sorry, I didn't number it. So we go from top to bottom. Okay. This will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
Okay, so which one is the uterus?
The uterus is the V shape. Oh, here you go. Okay.
The V shape? Okay.
Okay. And
that was correct.
Right. And
can you like point to a circle? And
yes. Can you see my cursor?
Okay. Yeah, we see it now.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the uterus. Yes.
And then you have fallopian tubes, which are the little stringy things. Oh God, sorry.
Which one is this is the fallopian tube, yes. So what is this?
That's an
ovary.
That's an ovary.
Okay. And then what is this right here? This little red dot.
Is it the cervix?
Cervix. Yes. So this is the cervix.
And then the vulva.
This one right here.
Is that the vagina?
Yes, that is the vagina.
Okay.
It's just the vaginal opening, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that's where the baby is.
I was gonna say it looked like the open. I don't know.
It's definitely where the baby's gonna kill you. So yeah.
What'd you say?
The baby's gonna take you out.
Okay. Okay. All right. Good job. Okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought. That one was pretty good. Thanks for participating, everybody. Thank you. All right. So, activity 2. This is called Two Truths and a Lie. So, I want you guys to just take a look at these. So, there's 2 truths and 1 is a lie. And then I'll give it like 2 minutes and then we'll see what everybody says.
Can you read all 3 out loud, please?
Sure. Why not? Consent must be established before sexual contact of any kind. Once consent is given for sexual contact, it can be taken away. Only gay men can transmit HIV from one sexual partner to another.
Okay, so the second one would be the lie. Only consent is given for sexual contact if it can be taken away. I think that's probably a lie. Once consent is given for sexual contact, it can be taken away. No, that's true. I'm sorry, my bad.
I was gonna say, well, anybody else? You already started, so we'll keep going.
Disregard that one.
I'll say that the last one is a lie. It says only gay men can transmit HIV from one sexual partner to another. That's not true. We know, based on modern science, that straight men and women can transmit HIV.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay. So, right. So, similar to what Ariana said, thank you for participating. Yes. So, the third one is a lie. And you explained it pretty much the same way I would have. Shakia, so for that second one, maybe it was confusing. So once consent is given for sexual contact, it can be taken away. So like, say for an example, this is what I was thinking. Say for an example, you're engaging in sex, you're having sex, and then all of a sudden you're like, I don't really like this. I'm not feeling it. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. That's what I meant by like taking the consent away. So even if it's like mid-sex or I already said yes and then I changed my mind, you can take away that consent. Does that make more sense?
So when I saw that, I wasn't taking it in that particular sense. I think I was looking at both of the questions at the same time, like the first one and the second one, because I'm actually trying to look for my phone. But that was not my answer. But yes, you can definitely take it away. You know, you can get in a situation and you like, I don't, this is not it. And yes, you had the right to say no. Absolutely. So that was not my first initial response of what I was thinking about. But yeah, everybody has the right to say no, no matter if the person thinks you like them or whatever, but you definitely have the right to say no at any time, man or female. So yeah, I just kind of mix it up a little bit.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's why I figured I was like, let me explain it because it may be.
Yeah, that's why I had asked you to read it, because I felt like it would be like a better explanation if you would have like read it and explained each to us.
Gotcha. Alrighty, thank you. So this is just some information about syphilis and congenital syphilis. So that's when the syphilis is acquired through pregnancy from mom to baby. And this is the rates in the US and then Maryland specifically. So like, for an example, primary and secondary syphilis are the most infectious stages of syphilis and represent new infections. So from 2016 to 2020, this is what this chart represents right here. PNS syphilis rates rose from 50% in the US, and then in the Maryland by itself, it rose 69% in Maryland, syphilis cases. And this is per 100,000 people. And then if we look at the chart on the right over here, so this is talking about congenital syphilis. So this is when it's acquired through pregnancy. From 2016 to 2020, the CS rates rose 235% in the US, and then in Maryland, 102%, right? And this is per 100,000 live births. So within 4 years, it rose 102% cases of syphilis, right? So this is obtained from the CDC as well. So again, it just looks at the implications like the STD and STI rates are increasing, as well as barriers to prenatal care. So also, again, another social work concern. It just makes you wonder what we can do. Um, Not what we can do, but we know what to do, but just being able to teach sex education to everybody, even adults, because a lot of like when we did the icebreaker at the beginning, where we talked about our experiences with sex education, some of us weren't taught medically accurate sex education as kids or as teenagers. So as adults, we may still have some things that we're not, 100% aware of. So module 5, this is just talking about the overall statistics, right? So a study conducted on sex education with second to fourth graders revealed that students maintain a significant increase in their knowledge about appropriate touch and how to navigate through unsafe situations. So aside from talking about just the act of sex, right? Sex education, if we start early with our younger kids, this is talking about second to fourth graders, just teaching them about safe touch and what parts of the body should no one touch other than, I guess, well, even with parents, it gets a little iffy too sometimes. But what is safe touch? Safe touch should not hurt you, right? So teaching those things, when they were taught that, they felt like they were more knowledgeable about appropriate touch, and reporting inappropriate touch to a trusted adult as well. So another study across 21 urban schools in the US showed that there was no increase in anxiety when talking about um, sex education, which was a concern for some parents, leading researchers to believe that it is safe and beneficial to discuss sensitive subjects such as sex education and early intervention with young children. And then as cited in the Center for Change, laws have been passed in Oregon, New Jersey, and California that emphasize teaching sexual education, which includes communication, talking about monogamy and relationships, safe sex, sexuality, and reproductive and personal boundaries to ensure that all education is consistent. And then, ironically, but not much, California, Oregon, and New Jersey have lower teen pregnancy rates than the national average, between 3% and 11%. But again, it's like, okay, we're looking at what are they being taught, right? So for this last 15 minutes, we're just going to take any questions open for discussion, or any topics you guys wanted to touch more on.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
At what age would you say providing this information is like suitable for kids to learn about? Like, I understand the physical touch and all that, but like how deep do you go into sexual education when you're talking about uh young children and what they should be learning about it?
Yeah, sure. Actually, that's a really good question. Thanks for asking. So personally, I like the approach that sex education should be taught as early as kindergarten. However, I think that again, it should be age appropriate. So like I think one of the studies in Maryland, there is no restrictions for age appropriate. So like the same information I think before, like you could teach a 16-year-old in Maryland would be okay to teach them in kindergarten. And I don't think that's right, but again, that's the law right now in Maryland. So I think like it should start as early as possible, like as early as they're able to comprehend. And sometimes it's even less than kindergarten age. Like just talking about safe touch might be age appropriate for a kindergartner. And what, like, and then I think as the grade, like as they get older, then it can be a little bit more in depth based off, you know, their comprehension skills, if that makes sense. So like essentially for like, okay, a kindergartner, let's talk about safe touch. I think that, that's appropriate. Who should be touching you? Where should they be touching you? Who do you tell if somebody is touching you inappropriate? Like I think that's appropriate rather than teaching them about condoms in kindergarten. I don't think that's age appropriate. So I hope that answered your question.
I kind of had a question, kind of like piggybacking off of that kind of stuff. Because I know earlier on in your presentation, you were saying well, you gave us the information about how, like, in Maryland, the sex education can be biased. It doesn't have to be medically accurate, but it's supposed to be age appropriate. But if it doesn't have to be medically accurate and it can be biased, then can the sex education technically like not even be proper education? Like, does that mean they can be lying to the children about like the information?
So it's the way that the law is set up right now in Maryland, yes, they could be lying. Like there are no, so I got my information actually. I'm sharing my screen so you might be able to see it. Hold on. And no, it doesn't have to be accurate at all. So yeah, essentially they could be lying or they could be giving biased information, like how some of the um things are talking about like abstinence only. Um yeah, that doesn't have to be medically accurate at all. So yeah, they could, but I mean, I guess it depends. And that's the thing though, it's subjective. It's not based off of factual information. So like this chart right here, are the general requirements for sex and HIV education. So like if we look at the top, I wish I could make it smaller, but I don't know how to do that.
I was gonna say, just if you can just scroll down to
It
Maryland.
just remember because Maryland is a little bit lower. So if you look,
Oh, so I won't see the
right, that's why I was trying to see if I can make it smaller. But okay, accept. We gonna
Oh, well,
accept
I
it.
can see that it says it doesn't have to be accurate. It can
All right,
be
hold on. All right, there we go. Boom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be age appropriate. Wow. And it can promote wow.
It can promote religion. Yep.
Wow. That's very interesting.
Right. So it's like, what are you teaching my kids?
Exactly. And I can see why maybe some parents do opt out, even though generally speaking, I feel like hearing that made me automatically think, like, why would you want your child to opt out of sex education? But now thinking about the things that they could potentially be telling the kids and the fact that it doesn't have to be accurate, I could see why some parents may opt out of like letting the children be taught like in a professional, like educational setting.
Yeah. And then you look at like, what is this? Indiana and Illinois and Idaho, and it's not mandated for sex education at all.
But they have some of like Indiana. Is it Indiana I'm looking at? No, Illinois has like I think the most like it
X's,
has to
yeah.
be like it has to be medically accurate, it has to be age appropriate, like all those positive things, but for some reason the sex education is not mandated there.
Right, but then the parents don't have to get notice and they don't have to give consent. So it's actually really confusing. Like if they were to check off that it was so only HIV is mandated. That's very interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting.
Like I'm scrolling, I'm like, oh, it's another chart. Okay.
Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, so look, Maryland is all across the board on this chart right here. It has to talk about healthy relationships. I don't remember learning about that, so maybe the curriculum is different now. Self-discipline, like I don't remember learning about that either when I was taking sex ed. Um,
I
but
think maybe
refusal.
like it's definitely changed over the years because sorry, I was having technical difficulties in the beginning when you were asking about when we had sex education, but I had my first exposure to sex education when I was in the 4th grade. And my teacher just put on a video that was about like menstrual cycles and periods, and that was all we got. Like they separated us by girls and boys, so I don't know what was in the boys video, but the girls, we saw a video that was just about like menstruals and cycles, stuff like that. And then afterward, the teacher basically told us that, you know, you guys are getting older, you're going to be in middle school soon. And she was just like, you guys need to get toys. Like, if you ever have urges, just get toys, don't have sex.
Oh
She said
wow, okay.
masturbation is the healthiest thing. And that's all we knew. She didn't even actually tell us what sex was. We just knew if we felt urges, her advice was to get toys. There was nothing about
And
healthy relationships, involvement of boys parts, like
Oh
boys parts,
wow.
female parts coming
in
together. We
fourth
didn't get
grade.
any of, yeah, in 4th grade. And I went to public school.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
all we were told,
I
which
had really
I
not
feel like
anything.
confused
It was
us
just
more
how
than
to use
anything.
like sanitary napkins and tampons, but it was never anything really about sexual intercourse or even what it looked like. Or it was never any of that. And we heard that at 8th grade. So for you to hear it in 4th grade, that's crazy. I don't know if I want my 4th grader to be learn about sex and masturbation. That's kind of like a little bit like, wow.
Yeah, I think we were all kind of in shock because we had never heard anything like that before. And so I
Wow.
think it put us into more confusion than anything because we didn't have the full proper education. And we were only in 4th grade, like we were very young. So we
Right.
literally had no idea
Like,
what she was talking about.
but why are you thinking about sex in 4th grade? I would hope that you're not. It's like
I mean, that's the
then think
thing. A
about
lot. I mean, us
puberty.
girls definitely weren't because we were confused. We were just like, we don't even understand why we're watching this video, you know?
That's weird. Hmm. So I guess it depends on your school and where you go. And I know it's not good to um keep things a secret as far as sexuality and all those type of things. But I think 4th grade is like a little bit like, wow.
Yeah, I
That,
definitely think it was too young. And I
yeah.
don't know. Well, I was in public school in Baltimore City, so I don't know if like Baltimore City is just trying to educate kids younger, just because maybe statistically Baltimore City has higher rates for certain things.